Welcome to another Sovereign Stack podcast. I'm your host today, Mallow, and I'm very pleased to have with me the CEO of Sentz, money remittance app, and MobileCoin network, Sara Drakeley. So welcome, Sara, to our podcast, and thank you very much for coming. Very excited to chat to you about Sentz and MobileCoin.
Thank you, Mallow. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a big fan of you guys, and excited to talk about everything we're doing at Sentz and yeah, what the future holds.
Hopefully, we'll be asking you some questions, and I'm sure everybody else is really excited to hear about what you've got to say. So we'll start off in probably time-honored fashion. We're not going to disrupt the mold too much. If you could just tell me a little bit about your background and what drew you to MobileCoin, what's its mission, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So my background, I wanted to be a physicist. That was my dream, and I specifically wanted to be Richard Feynman. And
Okay.
that the coolest physicist playing bongo drums, and that was my vision for myself. And so pursuing physics, I ended up going to MIT. And while I was getting my physics degree, I realized that what I really loved about physics was math, and what I really loved about math was applied math. And I had to take a class at some point where, the TA is writing on the whiteboard for da 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 blah blah blah. And I was like, "What is happening? Like, why? What is this?" And I'm like nudging the person next to me. They're like, "That's a for loop." I'm like, "What's a for loop?" I'm like looking it up. I'm like, "Oh shit, I need to learn how to program." And so that was my first introduction to programming. And then I was just like, "Oh, okay." Can get paid to have this much fun. That's amazing. And I ended up going out of MIT to work in the film industry, writing software for Disney animation. My specialty was,
Okay.
my specialty was procedural geometry, which is, if you're familiar with, are you familiar with graphics, Mola?
I am, yes.
Okay, yes. So procedural geometry this is all of the things that an artist can. It would kill an artist if they had to animate every leaf on a tree, for example. And so with procedural geometry, you write these procedures and algorithms that generate a tree, generate a forest, generate fur on animals, and then all of the algorithms for it to interact with the clothes that they're wearing for Zootopia. And so, yes, I was there from Frozen, well, Wreck-It Ralph actually, through Moana, and worked on everything from trees to the water of Moana, the fur on Zootopia. It was a really, really amazing time, and I learned so much. You'd think, making cartoons is light work. It is not. It's really hard work.
Okay.
And it was just an absolute blast. And I could have done that for 30 years. And that was what kind of challenged me to look outside of that industry and say, what could I do with these skills beyond animation? Because I can always come back. It's not like my skills are going to atrophy, but I have to experience, something outside of this industry. And that was when I went into finance, where a lot of graphics really applies well to finance. And I went to a hedge fund that did some trading and worked on the infrastructure there. And that was the first kind of, oh wow, the financial system around the world is so complex, so interesting, so multi-layered. There are so many influences, and I fell in love with it. But I didn't love New York City. And when I was there, we had the bomb cyclone came through, and I'm a California native, and I was just like, what? And there's, in New York, it's, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And I was like, what if I don't have to make it anywhere? What if I just have to make it in California? And so anyway, came all the way back to California, and I worked at SpaceX, which was a little bit back to my roots with simulation, back to graphics. So I was on the rocket simulation team, and you simulate everything about the rockets before you build it, and even as you're building it, and testing out different algorithms, because SpaceX is doing really innovative stuff. I'm sure you and your listeners are aware of, like, landing rockets that you can reuse rockets, and all of that requires some hefty simulation and processing. So that was what I was working on when a good friend of mine, Josh Goldbard, who's the CEO, or who was the former CEO of MobileCoin, we were at a wedding, and he, was asking me about what was the the most impactful bug I'd ever shipped. And I thought this was just a fun, party talk, but it was actually, this is how he soft recruits people, because he wants to hear, the level of impact you have had at organizations. Like, what have people trusted you with? And I told a story about about a multi-million-dollar bug at the hedge fund, where it's like, ultimately that didn't matter. That was like in the error margin for a day of trading. And he was like, oh, we should talk some more. And then that was how he convinced me. And then at that time, I thought cryptocurrency was a solution in search of a problem. And I was like, I don't know, especially from finance, that was definitely the sentiment at Wall Street at the time. And so I was carrying that sort of, like sticking my nose up at crypto, like, oh, it's just a big database that was built incorrectly. And Josh was like, oh, Sara, oh, you don't you don't know, you don't see. Let me show you. And he explained what decentralization really meant, and what it meant to dissolve borders, and what it meant to have like sovereign technology, which just completely blew my mind. And I was sold. I was like, I have to join in on this movement. And why MobileCoin? Because at that time they had just finished the white paper. This was 2017, 2018. They just finished the white paper, and it was so revolutionary to me to be able to have encrypted payments. And it's a long journey, and so I won't keep. I've gone on long enough, but that
fine.
that was the start. That was when I joined MobileCoin, and I think it's so important to have. Maybe I'll just explain the mission, why it matters to have encrypted payments is what we're used to in the US is, we pay with our credit cards, we pay with cash, we pay online with digital credit cards, we pay with banks, ACH. We have a well-functioning financial system. And it's a very complicated financial system. If you think crypto is complicated, look at credit card acceptance and how that actually works, right? There are so many pieces involved, so many points of failure, so many like mesh networks. It's incredibly complex. And crypto simplifies that in a way where you get to have just a direct transaction with your counterparty. But the problem is most of the solutions today have been implemented in a way that it is not private. And I think we learned this the hard way with Bitcoin, where we started feeling like, oh, it's pseudonymous and that's great. And then it became clear, like, no, it's not. There's enough metadata, there's enough direct data in the blockchain that there are many ways now to identify your activity. And then on Ethereum, there's the ENS system. I can just go look up Vitalik's ENS and see all of his transactions. Like that's how it's designed. And on the one hand, there are benefits to that because of different regulations where it's important to be able to report suspicious activity, right? So SARs are critical in being able to identify fraud. Because of the pseudonymity, there was a lot of attraction for fraudsters who, over the years, credit card companies also know this, like fraudsters are always looking for the next best payment mechanism and how they can leverage it for nefarious purposes. And so blockchain had that too. And when you have that sort of activity, you want a way to turn on the lights and have all of the cockroaches scatter. And so that I think has been the tension. But the problem is that you can't have a payment system with full transparency. And we know this intuitively. You know that you can't go to the coffee shop, buy a coffee, have the barista know your salary, the person behind you knows that you paid your therapist last night, your ex knows your real-time location because they also know the physical address and the blockchain address of that coffee shop. They know where you are at that moment. And someone a hacker, in North Korea knows that you just like, we can't have a fully transparent payment system. And governments know this too. This is why with the development of the internet, it was, you couldn't do payments on the internet in the beginning. SSL had to be invented and leveraged. And then there was the Wild West of data harvesting, and governments had to come in and say, hey, we need some regulations to protect users' data. And that's why we have privacy policies. The same thing's going to happen with payments on blockchain. There's no way that there's not going to be data protection laws. And so we're built from the ground up to have all of that protection, to put that data custody into the user's hand the same way they're custodying their funds.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive answer, actually. I might, maybe I could pick up on a couple of things that you mentioned earlier. You were when you were at Disney, you did water and trees and things for Moana and stuff. This was presumably, I'm guessing you were using NVIDIA for the graphics processing?
No, so actually this was, well, maybe NVIDIA by now, but this was like, yeah, graphics cards for sure, and implemented in, I know less about the hardware we were using at that time and way more about the algorithms we were using. So we were using CUDA, we were doing, hyper parallel processing. And we actually, while I was there, implemented our own renderer as well. So previously we were using Pixar's ray tracing RenderMan, or not ray tracing. At that point, it was what's it called? It's not on the top of my stack right now, but it was the precursor to ray tracing. And then we implemented our own called Hyperion, which is ray tracing, and it's just beautiful. And you can see the difference. Frozen was the last RenderMan film, and then Big Hero 6 was the first full Hyperion film. And it's just a step function. And then Pixar also implemented their own ray tracer as well. And I think Monsters Inc. 2 or Monsters University was the first one. And yeah, it's incredible, the progress made in graphics.
Well, yes, Moore's law still kind of applies for graphics, doesn't it? It grows so fast, and parallel processing is going off the charts. It's just incredible at the moment.
Yeah, now that we have all the AI, like that is driving. It's so funny. It was like Bitcoin was driving, significant hardware development, and especially because it was all paid for in cash, like miners buy hardware in cash. And then now AI is driving hardware development, which is great for, it's great for industries to keep pushing on these. And it's funny how, like one of the fears about Bitcoin is, wait, we're encouraging optimizing our hardware to be able to crack hashes. Do we really want to go down that route, but yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe we do. But then, as Mark Andreessen says, for everything that becomes something that can attack a system, you just build a better system.
Yeah.
That seems to be his answer to everything. That AI is not going to be an issue. We'll just build better AI than the bad guys. Okay, Mark. maybe we're not.
No, I love like building better payments. Yes.
and so I'm guessing from SpaceX, you were doing graphical and physical simulation. So you were applying a physics model to the graphics, and then trying to work out what was going to happen to a re-entry rocket or a re-lander or something like that.
That's right. So the piece I was working on at the time is something called Waterhammer. And so there's the Merlin engines, and there's all these tubes, they're ultimately ferrying the fuel to the right place at the right time. And they're controlled by, the fuel goes in and out, controlled by these valves. The thing that's funny about fluid has properties that we don't understand necessarily. And I actually took a whole class on this that by now is even out of date, everything I learned in that class, because we're just learning exponentially about fluid dynamics. But there's these things called shocks. And if you cut off a valve, Waterhammer is this phenomenon where the water just shoots back and forth in the pipe and really shakes everything. And you can look this up on YouTube, Waterhammer, and you've probably experienced it when you shut off your pipe, like turn off your hose or something, or you hear your pipes rattle when you turn them off. And so that happens in engines. And so we had to simulate it and make sure, okay, if we've programmed the rocket to do all of these automated steps, what's the effect on the Waterhammer? And so, yeah, that was what I was working on.
Cool. And how was Elon at the time?
Oh, I don't know. I know I was in the same room with him. I was in the same room with Gwen Shotwell, who's just an amazing inspiration to me. She's the president, I think, of SpaceX.
Yeah. Wow. She's like the calm to Elon's storm, isn't she?
I think I've heard similar.
Anyway, let's not get into libel territory. Okay, so you met Josh. He asked you an interesting question, and literally from there, you thought, this is great. So you're into decentralized payments. So you joined MobileCoin, and just tell me a little bit about your journey through MobileCoin as well, then.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I started as I was the third engineer, and I was that we were a very small team, and for a long time, I think until about 2021, we were only about 10-ish engineers, and that was when at the end of 2020 was when we launched the network. And then in 2021, we launched Fog, which is and I can get more into that later, but Fog is our Oblivious computing solution that enables you to have mobile self-custody. And we launched Fog in 2021, then we launched in Signal, and then we closed our Series B. And this was also when I became CTO at MobileCoin. And then we scaled up, trying to build so many things that we knew needed to exist. And then, the flock of black swans of 2022 happened, and we had to adjust our strategy, accordingly, which most of the industry did. And then so we scaled back down, and we really laser focused on what needs to happen to win ultimately. Like, what needs to happen to have the right experience that helps people pay each other around the world. And that's been our laser focus. And at that time, actually, was when Bob Lee joined us. Bob was the first CTO at Square, and he made Cash App. And when I became CTO, I asked our board, do you guys have anyone you'd recommend as an advisor? I'd love to have some guidance as I'm taking on this role. And Bob became my advisor, and it was just absolutely the best working with him. And he got so excited about what we built, and he said, "Oh my God, this is what enables the global Cash App, because Cash App's only in the US and Canada." And it's like, why don't we have a global Cash App? And the reason is because of how hard it is to send money cross-border, how expensive, and how there are so many barriers to make that happen that blockchain just blows right through. And so he joined us as our chief product officer, and he really helped us hone our vision to this really laser focused, let's make the global Cash App. And that was when Mobi was born, which was our own app that then became, now we've just rebranded to Sentz.
Okay, brilliant. I don't know whether you're allowed to mention, are there any people on your Series A or Series B who hold a lot of weight in the industry, for example? Is there anyone you'd be able to mention who's an investor?
Oh, that's a good question. We have really great investors, and I think, let me see what's public. Do you mind if I look that up real quick?
Yeah, sure.
There was an article. There's been a few articles about it. I'm assuming you can edit so that there's not just
I'll put in some incidental music.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'll share. So in our Series B, we had funding from some of the big players in the industry: Block Tower, Coinbase Ventures, Mark Benioff's Time Ventures, Vi Capital, and our Series A had General Catalyst and Future Ventures. So we've got some really, really incredible investors who have been helping us and guiding us from the beginning.
Fabulous. That's really great. And well, fingers crossed they'll continue to help you through product market fit and global domination. So you went through a rebrand from Mobi to Sentz, and Sentz is now kind of launched as the global privacy payments application. I must say, it's about 1/4 of a cent to send any amount of money anywhere in the world, which is pretty phenomenal, to be fair. Me and a few others have tried it. It's pretty much instant. All you need is one person's reference. Your keys it's super easy to use. There's none of this 15 words that you've got to write down and then swallow. It's a normal application for normal people, I would say. So what are you working on at the moment, and what's the next 6 to 12 months looking like?
Yeah, you touched on a couple of pieces that we're really working on now, as well as I can share some of the longer roadmap too. So one of the things you mentioned, the having to write down the words that represent your private keys. And we think that this is a huge barrier for the average person to be able to use payments, because it's really confusing when you're going through the app and you're like, well, what are all these words? And then, it's not, you shouldn't screenshot them, because who knows who you shared your photos with. Like TikTok's going to now have access to all your funds. And so how do we help people not have to encounter that in the first place and still be protected? Because those 24 words, those are your keys. That is how you have full access to all of your funds. And so this was really important to us to solve this. And so Signal developed something called secure value recovery. And this is like servers that your phone is able to write data to encrypted, that you can decrypt with just your phone number and your key. And it's all through the magic of cryptography and key derivation functions. So it is fully secure, and it's just and you can back up anything you want with the secret key that's in secure value recovery. And so that's what we're using to back up your 24 words. And then in addition, so that and we call it, if you lake your phone, if you throw your phone into a lake, you can still get all of your funds back. You don't need that phone, because we don't think it's acceptable to have a model of you need to put your keys on a piece of paper under your mattress. Like that's actually a step backwards in finance management. And so we want to, we want people to still have access to what's a fully digital experience, but not be exposed to losing their keys. Okay, so that's something. And then also the durable backup to iCloud, for example, as another way. So having multiple ways to back up your keys in a safe way. So these are things we have shipped already, just shipped, and the experience is going to improve so that you're not exposed to those words. And then our next 6 to 12 months is really focused on go to market. We have everything. We have everything we need in the app, that the experience is fully there. Things that we want to go to market for are, we are looking at a beachhead use case of cross-border freelancers, because post-COVID, remote work has completely changed. You can work from anywhere in the world for anyone in the world, and it's super easy as long as you have an internet connection, but you can't get paid from anywhere in the world. And my personal experience of sending money to the Philippines after a hurricane, Typhoon Goni, in 2020, I was able to text immediately with my family, and we could check they were okay, and we asked them what they needed. What they needed was money. Trying to send them money days. And I know that many of your listeners are familiar with this, because this is also, the mission of several companies in the space, including Reserve. And this has to be improved, and it's really ripe to be improved. And so that was really galvanizing for me. And then seeing it now in the freelancer space of the platforms taking sometimes up to 20%. So if you want to get paid through Upwork, it's like 20% fees. And that's insane, when I could just give you a link and you fulfill a payment request for me. And freelancers are already solving this problem of getting paid internationally using cryptocurrency, but the experience is just not quite where they need it to be. It's not built for them, and the fees are still too high. There's no privacy. And so we think we have a better solution that we're going to go to market with this specific use case. And to do that, to have a beach case use case, we also need a beachhead use case. We need a beachhead geography. And so we're looking at countries where inflation is super high, people need access to USD, or they want access to USD. And one of the countries that is very much on our roadmap is Nigeria. And even in the past 2 weeks, the conversion rate from Naira to dollar was 50% inflation. It went from 957 Naira to 1,503 Naira in 2 weeks, right? And this is a country that has an official conversion rate as well as a black market rate, because you can get better rates than the bank can offer you. Argentina has something similar. There are cuevas where you can get a better rate in person. And so these are geographies that we're really interested in going to market in.
Okay, so very interesting. Yeah, I think certainly cross-border payments, we all know that the traditional finance way of doing that, it's convoluted, it's slow, certainly very slow from the USA, and it's incredibly expensive. the average remittance price in kind of 2022, 23 was around, it was average was about 6%. So people were paying 6% to send a cross-border payment. I mean, nobody in the world pays 6% commission on anything. It's just mental, and that's just to move money. So, and that's probably the cost and the inefficiency of moving that money through 5 or 6 layers of finance. It's really, as normal happens in these situations, it's the poorest people who pay the most to do something. You know, they're not moving trillions of dollars around. They're trying to move $20 or $30. Well, you know, that's 30%. 6% of that is gone in a transaction. It's terrible. So the fact that people can properly move their own money around at the fraction of a cent and it be private, that is, for me, it's a complete and utter no-brainer. It's just a case of awareness and scale.
Yeah. Oh, same page. Yeah. When I sent the money to Philippines, it was $1,000 and it was 4% for that transaction. So that was $40 in the fee. And $40, you know, and what sucks about the paradigm right now is that, you know, the remitter for us, $40, yeah, it sucks. That's like, you know, a nice dinner for me and my husband. But for the recipients, for our family, that would have been a significant amount of supplies, like rice for the village and that. And so it hurt to be like, wow, this, you know, the reason they need money, this like really wage disparity is kind of being taken advantage of because we're willing to pay that extra $40 when it really would have made a difference to them.
Yeah, and I think that the lens is always coming from developed and rich countries, and they don't see the world in the same way as everyone else does. You know, as you said, $40 is a lot of money. If you gave $40 to somebody in Nigeria, for example, they would be your friend forever. And it's just completely, we assume that the whole world works like this, but it doesn't. You know, only the top 5% of the world consider $40 not to be very much. The rest of the world think it's a lot of money.
Exactly.
Okay, so yeah, enough of the apologizing, but to get back onto topic and to bring this a little bit around towards reserve as well. Within Sentz app, you're using eUSD, electronic USD, which you created. So no holds barred. What's the verdict so far? What does your team think about the use of eUSD and as an R token, and you know, positives and negatives?
We love our tokens, obviously. Well, so it's interesting because, yeah, we get this question a lot of, well, why didn't you just get USDC wrapped to your chain, right? So I think that's a really important question. And the conceit behind our tokens is really special. We really like the RSR staking to stabilize in case of a depeg of the basket constituents, right? So we saw this happen last year. The USDC depegged. And it was it didn't have an impact on the USD basket, even though I think it was 30% of the basket at that time. And that's because the RSR kicked in to support the peg, and it worked beautifully. It didn't need human intervention. It was phenomenal to see that in action. And that the ability to have more stability through smart financial instruments, I think this is the key of the future, is like automated financial instruments. Obviously, you know, that's my longer way of saying DeFi, but it's like that is the key, and this is how we get more access to the sort of instruments that we have, you know, in the US or in the UK, where it's like there are so many things you can do with your money, and you can invest it in so many ways, or you can put it to work in so many ways, and that's just not accessible in places that don't have a lot of banking infrastructure. But with DeFi and with smart instruments, you can supply that. And so that's what I love about reserve in general. I think they're thinking about it really, really smartly from the bottom up of how do we provide stability to the world, and then thinking through and building it. And just that, I think our tokens are the result of that. And then where we want to go next is, like, we love the ability to have a basket that is constituted of high yield assets like high USD. We love the flat coin concept, the idea that you're offsetting inflation. And I think that opens up the door to assets on chain that represent fiat, even that has inflation problems, right? And I think that's going to be interesting at scale. And so, yeah, I not just to gush about our tokens and reserve, but we're huge fans. And the E and eUSD is encrypted dollar. And what we had to develop in order to support USD on our chain is previously we only had one asset, MOB, and in order to support a new asset, we developed confidential assets so that you can't tell which asset is even being transacted in. We also implemented it so that you can transact and pay the fee in whatever asset you have on hand. So you can pay the fee in USD or you can pay the fee in MOB. And this gives the user, again, more choice, more power. And I think Reserve and our tokens are also about like, let's design the right sorts of assets and the right sorts of financial instruments that ultimately gives the power to the people who are custodying these assets.
Yes, well, that's a very good review. What in that case, I'll just fire that up because you did mention high USD and you mentioned yield bearing. So obviously there are tokens like high USD. High USD is a very good one, and they're available. And I guess because of the way that you redesigned the back end to be able to deal with more than one token, should we say, so you can now use MOB or eUSD. But I'm guessing now that means that's one to many. So you can implement other types of eUSD, like you could do eHUSD, for example, within Sentz if people wanted to save money, for example.
That's exactly right. Yeah, this is very much on our roadmap, and I think that's the magic moment. So if I'm, like we joke sometimes, or maybe it's not so much of a joke, but it's like our goal is to flip the paradigm on its head. It's not that we want to help bank the unbanked. It's that we want to unbank the world, right? And so we want you to be able to self-custody your savings account, and you're able to say, come back to the app, and you see the value has ticked up, and that's a magic moment. Whereas, an anti-magic moment is if we only had one asset and then we just did the conversion live in the app, and so we're saying, okay, this asset is worth this much USD today, or it's worth this much euros, and all the currencies fluctuate against each other. And so you're in Germany and you go to check on how much you have, and it's like, oh, I thought I had 10 euros, but it's $9 or €9.97. That's a bad experience. And so yeah, that's our definitely on our roadmap. Very excited about that.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. And then of course you can probably look towards a float, as it were. So if we talk in terms of PayPal, people just keep money in PayPal because they know they pay for things in PayPal. So generally they'll keep a float, and I think I might be wrong, but it's around $350 at the moment. And obviously, if you get enough users who want to save some money, then there's potential there for everyone to get their bit of the interest, but also for you to pay your own fees and to create a flywheel of offering better value, etc., etc. I'm guessing that's all part of it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the really nice thing about RSR staking too, is that people helping to secure the network can then also be rewarded for that. So like the incentives are just really well designed and really well aligned.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Let's touch on Signal. I'm going to ask you a fairly ambiguous question, and you're free to only answer what you feel comfortable with. Signal, you can pay, you can move MOB around in Signal as part of the Signal wallet. So payments can be done in MOB from Signal user to Signal user, I believe. There may or may not be something to do with ESD about wallets there, but I know you're not a representative of Signal, but how do you think Signal are thinking about payments? I'm sure Elon is thinking about payments in X because he seems to be trying to revisit Xbank, X.com of the late 90s, I think. So how do you think Signal is thinking about that? Because MOB is, I'm sure it's great, but it's volatile, and that, you know, for a casual person, if I want to send $1, I'd hope that the person I sent $1 to gets $1, if you see what I mean.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, this is a really interesting question, because I think it speaks to, or the answer at least speaks to, how things have changed in the past 4 to 5 years, and how we anticipate them changing in the future too. Because originally the idea was that we want an asset that is not tied to any fiat. And this was before stablecoins were even really a concept. Like, I think Tether was nascent at the time, but it was like Tether had a you know, a lot of, it was sus. Everyone was suspicious of Twitter, Tether, and then we ended up deciding, okay, it doesn't matter if it's fiat backed, if it's really fast, and if the ramps are super seamless. And so the idea was, if I, and that this was kind of like the proto atomic swap, but through a medium exchange that was MOB, right? So the idea was, I'm in the US, I want to send money to Europe, and so I'm gonna on ramp from my bank, and I get MOB, and then because it happens so fast, and our transactions are really, really fast, so in just a few seconds, that those dollars, but in the form of MOB, are going to find their way over to the recipient in Germany, who's going to immediately, and we wanted this all to be automatic, immediately transfer to euro. And so it's like they didn't even know that MOB was the medium of exchange.
Right. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. And so, and it all depended on it being super fast, and it also depended on it being in like really seamless ramps. And what we've learned over the past 4 years is that ramps are nowhere near seamless. And in fact, there's kind of several layers. So you have the aggregators who are providing services. These are, you know, like Wire, RIP, or MoonPay, or like the aggregators, or Paybis, who we work with an aggregator, who are providing the like, we will do the credit card processing, the debit card processing, the bank processing, and we'll plug into whichever region we support. So we'll plug into SPAY in Mexico, we'll plug into SEPA in Europe, or we'll plug into PIX in Brazil. And that is an incredibly valuable service. At the same time, they have to fight a lot of fraud, because the traditional flows for them have been just people onboarding into crypto. So it was more like they were a merchant selling crypto than it was that they were a payment processor facilitating end-to-end payments. And so this has been something, as the industry has evolved and grown, and we've been pushing on this vision of end-to-end payments. Our partners have had to grow with us and with that vision, and become innovation partners with us. And that's what we love about Paybis. And so so the vision of not having to hold a volatile asset because it just moves so fast, ultimately we realized, okay, we need stable assets too, because some people are going to have to hold it until they can access a ramp, or in order to just use that asset to pay for things. And that was at the same time that stablecoins were really becoming popular, and we were seeing how viable they were. And so that was when we decided to launch eUSD. And so right now, eUSD is available in Sentz, and your same 24 words receives either eUSD or MOB. And so it's not yet exposed in Signal, because it's actually quite a lift to implement a multi-asset flow. So just the single asset with MOB is what just came out of beta a couple months ago. And I think the other aspect of it is, you know, not wanting to force USD on the world as the only asset. And so having more assets on chain, I think, would also better align with my understanding of Signal's mission.
Okay, yeah. So to offer up more choice rather than kind of force, yeah, as you say, try to force people down the USD route. So enable multiple options all at once, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So on the MobileCoin blockchain, are you open to other companies using that blockchain, or would you want to open up an API to them and say you can use this bit, but then it goes into a black box and then you get something out the other side? I don't know. I'm making that up a bit, but is it possible for other people to use your chain, your blockchain, and just for the privacy aspect, for example?
Yes, we are a completely open blockchain. Anyone can use it. We're all open source. Our SDKs are open source. The Signal implementation is open source. You can even see a reference implementation of a full wallet. We've got a enterprise wallet as well for businesses, so that you can have many customers and send money transactions from the same wallet all concurrently. That's what exchanges use when they integrate us. So yeah, we'd love for everyone to build on MobileCoin. I think it only makes the ecosystem stronger.
Absolutely. So do you have any, apart from just, I'm guessing it's all on GitHub, apart from going to GitHub, would people be able to go onto the Discord or anything like that if they wanted to build with you?
Yes, we do. We have a Discord. You can jump in there. And yeah, we'd love to hear, we'd love to collaborate.
I'm sure we'll put it in the show notes. Okay. And if we kind of lead into other things, so outside of payments, what else lights your fire? What gets you interested in things at the moment?
Oh, okay. Outside of payments, is it okay if I go like really outside of payments and technology altogether?
Yeah, of course. There's no problem at all. Go anywhere you like.
The thing that occupies most of my thoughts outside of payments and technology is I'm a mom and I have 2 kids, and they're both fairly young. I have a toddler and a newborn, and I get so excited seeing them grow and develop. There's a book. Are you familiar? Have you heard of the book 1,000 Days of Wonder by Charles Fernyhough?
I think I have heard of it. I haven't read it or anything though.
It was featured on Radiolab at some point, and that was my introduction to it. And then, so he's a journalist, scientist, and he has a daughter, and he decides he's going to learn everything he can about the first 1,000 days of life and how your brain develops. And this book, just like I've been reading it as my kids have been growing, and it's like little things like, did you know that every room is filled with echoes, and actually you hear echoes all the time and your brain is really good at filtering them, but when you're a kid your brain hasn't learned how to do that yet, and so they just hear echoes all the time. And I thought that was magnificent to picture, when they're looking around the room sort of startled. It's like, maybe that's because they're hearing all these echoes. you know
So how old are they?
They're about 3 years and 5 months.
5 months. Wow. Do you want to give them? You can give them a shout out. Why don't you give them a shout out, and then that can be part of their 1,000 days.
Well, so what's funny is my son's name is actually very similar to yours, Marlo.
Oh, okay.
So he's named Marlo. They both have Shakespearean names. Yeah.
Marlo. Well, my name. This is my nickname. It's not my real name. My real name's a bit longer than Mallow, but I go by Mallow.
Well, it's a great nickname then.
Okay, thank you. I said beforehand that we were going to touch on Jambo and Pix, didn't I? So I forgot about that. But yeah, sorry. If we get to just tell us about Jambo first, because I believe this is a mobile phone for $99, which has kind of got a crypto wallet in it already, and this is I think this might be primarily Nigeria based. Or tell me more about that.
That's right. So yeah, so they've made an affordable mobile device. They're our partner in Africa, and I think they're also planning to ship in a few other regions like the Philippines. And they are shipping with Sentz pre-installed as a wallet. And this is important to us to highlight again that self-custody technology and the mobile first technology for that. Yeah, we're delighted to go to market with them, and they've built in a way to experience the wallet so that you can see the full features of it, and so you get rewarded by doing different tasks in the wallet.
Cool. Okay. And I don't suppose you've got any initial numbers on how many Jambo phones are sold a year. I don't know. Is that available?
Not yet. It's like just getting, they just finished printing them and they just got to distributors.
Oh, right. Okay. It's right. So it's super new. Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, in about 2019, I think the roadmap for Reserve was to have it preloaded on mobile phones somewhere in Africa. But I don't think these would have been smartphones. These would have been pretty dumb phones.
Well,
so you beat them to the punch.
no, well, you touch on something really important, which is that I know there's been work on, there's so much work going on to try to be able to access Bitcoin, for example, from a dumb phone. Or I don't know, yeah, if dumb phone is the right, but yeah, from like a non-smartphone. And it's because so much of the population doesn't have phones yet. But also, on the other hand, so much of the population does have phones. And this is something, for example, in the Philippines, where it's like there was we have all of this telecom infrastructure, telephone poles and everything. And in the Philippines, it was just a leapfrog. They never built all that infrastructure. They were able to go to mobile phones even faster than the adoption in the US. And so I think it's a safe bet that that phones will continue to be kind of the forefront of the experience around the world globally. And we want our installation pattern to match the distribution of mobile phones.
Yep, completely get it. And so I saw a recent announcement on Twitter about Brazil and payment. Is this an on-off ramp with Pix?
It is, yes. So we're now plugged into Pix through our partner Pavis. And so you can directly on-ramp and off-ramp to Pix through the Sentz app.
So yeah, the flywheel seems to be growing exponentially. Looking forward to seeing what happens in the next few months. It looks pretty exciting.
That was the first part of our interview with Sara. Comes next are 2 additional questions that we asked at a later date. Sara, we've seen in the recent past, there were some delistings from Binance, of which MOB was included in the delistings. What can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so early in April, Binance made the decision to delist MOB. And they had signaled this was coming for a while. In late 2022, they actually delisted MOB from four countries in Europe. And there was never an official statement as to the reasonings behind why. So we could assume, because we were delisted along with other coins that had encryption properties, we were assuming that it had something to do with that. And we also assumed that it had something to do with some regulations that they were either anticipating. Perhaps they were working behind the scenes with regulators and trying to be proactive. But none of this was ever communicated publicly. It's also possible that they were making business decisions. And every business needs to manage their own risk and needs to manage their own upside. And so this was the choice that they made from a business perspective, because it was not at least publicly stated to be for any other reason. So it must be business reasons. We saw this happen, and we understood that this was probably the way that Binance was going to potentially go across global. And at that time, it was interesting because we had made choices as a project, and as Sentz, the company, we'd made choices that didn't rely on exchanges. And so in a weird way, what ultimately happened in April didn't impact our roadmap as much as it might seem that it should. I think any other project might have been very shaken by this and might have had to take radical measures. For us, it was less than a day's worth of attention because, one, we sort of knew that this was coming for a while, and we'd made strategic decisions that it didn't really matter to us. In addition, it's been for the past, we launched in 2021, and it's always been an uphill battle for us to get listed onto exchanges. And so being listed on Binance was such a huge milestone for us in 2022, we thought, but it also didn't impact us that much when we were listed on Binance. And the core reason behind all of this is that we are a payments platform. We are focused on delivering payments globally. And so this, the exchange ecosystem at best, it offers on and off ramps into our system. Otherwise, it's a platform for trading between different types of assets. We only had one asset on our blockchain from the beginning. And then when we got eUSD listed onto our blockchain, that asset also is not listed in very many places. It's on Big One. It's available in some dexes. You can get it from cross-chain bridging. It's on Ethereum, and it's listed in more places through Ethereum. But there's not a reliance on exchanges for us because we actually partner directly with ramps providers. And so this is a business model shift in the way that we're approaching payments, as opposed to other platforms and projects that are approaching this space as a way to get value out of a new token listing. And I want to emphasize this difference because I think it's hard to understand the paradigm of how payments fit into this overall exchange ecosystem. But you don't pay for you don't pay for your coffee with your Microsoft stock, right? Like there's a very different use case for something that you're looking for exchanges to support than there is for something that you're looking for a ramps provider to support. If I want to send money across the ocean, if I want to send money to Nigeria to pay for a web developer who's working on a project of mine, and I can pay them with just swiping my credit card essentially through my phone, and then it arrives in Nigeria in seconds. That is completely different than what an exchange is trying to serve. An exchange is trying to serve someone who is either doing secondary investments, they're diversifying their own investments, and they're trying to explore different ways to accrue value, or they're hedging against currency in some way. And so that's the long, maybe not the TLDR, a little bit of a long-winded answer, but I'd love to pull on any threads there that you find interesting.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Or the way to perceive it is not from the crypto lens, but from the payments lens. And I, that's the way I saw it too. It was like, well, I'm not, buying MOB, so this, and the people that use Sentz are not buying MOB. Like this is like a very concentrated problem, if there is anything at all, and they can find other exchanges to buy this token on if they really, or other avenues to buy this token on if they really had to continue, the speculation need. So, I
right,
agree.
and I think, yeah, that's the other really key part that you're emphasizing is, so the reason we built a blockchain at all, the reason we have a layer one, is because there was no other blockchain that met the needs that we saw were necessary for payments. And we also have evolved what we see is the need for the attributes of the different assets for payments. Because when we started out 2017, we very much believed that, Bitcoin, people needed something like Bitcoin for payments. That was how we started out. And over the past 5-6 years, it's become 7 years now. Oh my God. It's become clear that Bitcoin is not, I don't know that there's really a use case for Bitcoin for payments. And, the pitchforks may come after me, but the reason I say that is because it's clear that Bitcoin is more of a commodity. And if we think about what a commodity is, it's something where there is value derived from its specific properties. Okay. So why is gold valuable? On the one hand, it's rare. So having a fixed supply is part of it. On the other, it is, on the one hand, it's shiny, it's beautiful. It's easy to verify that it is gold versus other types of metals. And it is decomposable. Like you can, it's soft, so you can create jewelry from it, and you can create coins from it. Like there's a lot of nice properties of gold. Then more recently, in more recent history, it has become critical for electronics, right? And these properties make gold valuable. So why is Bitcoin a commodity? What are the properties that make it valuable? Well, it's this sovereign ledger, this append-only ledger of transactions. And it is the sovereign part, the fact that it is decentralized, that it is a technology that is just operating on its own accord, is like, that's a really mind-blowing concept. And I think that obviously that kickstarted everything about blockchain. And that is I think Bitcoin has intrinsic value similar to the way gold does, and that it will continue to be that way. And it has a fixed supply. And so I think that we'll continue to see Bitcoin have these commodity-like properties. And then we have things like the ETFs now, right? Like ways to have these derivatives around Bitcoin. And all of that is really healthy. I think that on a macroeconomic standpoint, it's great to have these new assets out there. And at the same time, I don't know that Bitcoin is right for payments. And I think that there are layers on top of Bitcoin that are getting closer to payments. I actually think wrapping Bitcoin to the MobileCoin blockchain makes it much more suitable for payments. And I'm excited for us to do that. And also, when we designed Mob, we were designing it in the image of Bitcoin and improving, in our minds, we thought at the time, improving upon Bitcoin's properties. And I still think this, and this is why I still hold Mob, is that I think that we have clearly a more private Bitcoin. We have a faster Bitcoin, a more affordable Bitcoin, and one that I think is exactly the right amount of decentralized so that you get the decentralized properties without the negative impacts of, all externalizing some of this expense of computation to the environment. So that's why Mob exists. And Mob will always be the native asset on our blockchain. It will always be the asset that is accepted for fees and the asset that is accepted for gas as we add more DeFi type features, more smart instrument features. And so I think long term, this will be clearly a short-sighted decision to delist Mob. And long term also, as privacy and compliance technology evolves, I think that's where we're really going to see how this was short-sighted. Because in order for an asset to be viable for payments, it has to at least have the privacy properties of Visa and MasterCard. It can't be public. Like that is clear to everyone. And yet, because the exchanges don't care about payments, that's why they don't want to support that type of use case.
Interesting. What do you think about? I've heard this this idea going around of mining. So obviously you have private transactions, validators that are running on the MobileCoin blockchain. They are validating the transactions. What do you think about people being able to compute their own proofs to make a transaction on their own devices? What do you think about, and this, we can cut this out if this is kind of a weird question, but this is like something that I've heard recently, is that people in projects are trying to make technology where you can maybe make like a proof, a ZK proof, of the transaction you're trying to do, and you just submit the proof to the blockchain, and that's included by a validator. So you're no longer like, and excuse me if I don't understand how MobileCoin works. Maybe this is how it actually works.
No, I love that you're asking the question. Yeah, because this is how MobileCoin works. So I'm smiling. You
Really?
Can't see my smile, but yeah. So this is part of why we designed our own blockchain, is that there, and also why we're doing something. So we have a zero knowledge component of the proof, but we're actually using a lot of different technologies to make proofs that are able to be constructed really quickly on a mobile device in a bandwidth constrained environment and submitted to the blockchain. So it's a small proof so that you can send it over bandwidth constrained networks.
Really?
And this, yeah. And this was a big accomplishment for us. And this is why, actually, in fact, we just received a patent a couple weeks ago for this technology. So the USPTO agrees that we have truly innovated in this space. And we call it Oblivious technology, Oblivious computing, because we're leveraging on the computing side something called ORAM, which is Oblivious random access memory. And yeah, I want to make Oblivious as sexy as ZK proofs, because I think that what we've done is really cool. And it is truly innovative. And it's something that it really leapfrogs a lot of the ZK work that's been done because of our focus from the very beginning on this mobile use case and on being able to do all of the things you need to do to maintain the end-to-end encryption and to do it on the mobile device, which is based off a lot of stuff that Signal pioneered. I mean, Signal does end-to-end encrypted messaging around the world. And so they've solved a lot of the hard problems around this. And we got to follow along and say, we can even solve this for payments. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Sara. How do you deal with data being stored at MobileCoin servers for the computing?
You've exactly hit on the paradigm shift of Oblivious computing, which is that even though Signal servers are ferrying pieces of data for you or storing pieces of data for you, to them, the data that they see is random noise. And same with everything that goes through Sentz servers, same as everything that goes through the MobileCoin network. It's as though it's like, so the dream of homomorphic encryption, where and we actually do have some homomorphic encryption Peterson commitments in our protocol. But like homomorphic encryption, the dream of it is that you could have a representation of data that by the time you've encrypted it, you could still do all of the operations. So all of the mathematical operations you would want to do on this data, you could still do, and it would work. And you would get a result that was valid without revealing anything about the data. And homomorphic encryption is really hard, and there's been so many strides towards it, but it's not like I'm abusing a little bit of this, but it's like there's not a Turing complete homomorphic encryption set of opcodes. But with Oblivious computing, what you're doing is you're able to say that whatever operation is happening, the person operating the server can't see into it in any way. And so it's sort of like that homomorphic encryption promise, but it's achieved through a different means of technology. And so anything that you store with Sentz is just a random blob. And same with Signal, it's a random blob. And so what they can be queried about, if by a third party, or if, say, someone who worked at Signal went rogue and wanted to learn about you, or if they became compromised and someone was trying to hack you. And this is all part of threat modeling, is trying to figure out the different attack vectors and the capabilities of your attacker. All they could do, even if they could access the servers, even if they had logins to the company's accounts, they just see random information about you. And there's even the FBI published it was a leak of an FBI document that was like, what can you see with each of these platforms? And it had WhatsApp, it had Facebook Messenger, and it had Signal. And the only thing that the FBI could get from Signal was a phone number and the last time of login. That's all you get from the customer data. And so I think that that's the sort of model that we are adhering ourselves to as well.
Interesting. Wow. I mean, that's actually pretty cool. I've tried to read the documentation on the MobileCoin website, and so I apologize for not knowing that in advance. But
that's okay.
That is actually really cool. I think computing your own proofs, not so I think this other project that I've been interested in, they make this point of, it's like interacting with a protocol versus interacting with somebody that approves your transaction, essentially, or a set of people that approve your transaction. Being able to prove that you can do the thing, and then your data just gets included, and then done. That should actually be the most efficient way to do things. In the first place, like, not interacting with other people or other parties. You're interacting with a rigid set of code, and you're proving that you can move assets or do a transaction, right? So that's very interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Maybe that's what you lead into. I think the next important question with that. So, okay, so let's say we can design technology, which we did, that has these properties that we think this is truly the properties of digital cash now, right? So it's like the only people who know about the transaction are you and your counterparty. And that's great. Most societies function perfectly well as cash-based societies, or they would, until we had enough technology that it was actually safer to store your funds with a bank than to put it under your mattress. And not only that, by storing it with a bank, you allow the bank to leverage your funds, and for that, they return to you some amount of interest. So even though, and this has risks, of course, like bank runs and all of this, and depending on which country you're in, or how the infrastructure is in your immediate neighborhood, is like the risk of storing funds with a bank could be greater than keeping it under your mattress. And then not only that, you also have the risk of the monetary policy of your government and whether they are managing that currency in a way that preserves its value or in a way that is not preserving its value. And so the risk of holding funds under your mattress are that if you're not leveraging with a bank, it's just losing value due to inflation. That is not made up in any other way, right? So there's these benefits of cash. It's yours, it's in your pocket. You don't have to worry about a bank run, but then there's also these risks. And at the same time, it's not convenient. It's like a few, or I don't know if it's a lot, but certainly several cities have made a mandate against non-cash stores. So there were stores that would say, we don't accept cash here anymore. We only want digital payments. We only want credit card payments, debit card payments. And this is it's actually a gatekeeping measure in a way where not everyone has the privilege of having access to bank accounts and cards. And if you have, and so you would then not be able to shop at those stores. And then on the other side, so just like painting this picture of the challenges around cash versus digital payments on a local level and a macroeconomic level. On the other side, you have mom and pop shops that only accept cash. And in this digital age, have you ever walked into a shop and wanted to buy something and realized it's cash only? And maybe you only have your phone on you because you were planning to tap to pay, and you can't shop at that store. And you wonder, why would that mom and pop shop turn away customers who didn't have cash on them? And the reason is because of the margins. And credit card companies take 3%. The average revenue margin for a restaurant is 3%, right? So you're giving your entire revenue margin or profit margin to the credit card company. And that's not feasible for a lot of restaurants. So they just opt not to accept cards. And so clearly there's a need for cash in society. And the thing that blockchain gives us is because you're able to operate a blockchain so much cheaper than the cards company can operate the interchange network. And because the fraud profile is so entirely different, that a lot of that 3% goes into covering fraud for the credit card companies and covering the points programs, right? So you're subsidizing someone else getting cheaper flights. That is it's working. It's clearly working well for Visa and MasterCard. They're 50-year-old companies. And at the same time, it's not working for a lot of people. And it's not available to everyone in the world. And so blockchain really stands to disrupt that. And especially blockchains that are designed for payments like ours. But the part that's still really important is that fraud component. So when you have fees on the blockchain, it's externalizing one thing, which is the cost of running the network and the cost of decentralization. And so that's what the network fee is. And that fee can be pretty low. It's not low on Bitcoin and Ethereum. And in fact, that's why Ethereum and Bitcoin both have had so much off-chain activity, is because the cost of the network that's being externalized is so high that it's more advantageous to develop these whole ecosystems that are off-chain and rolling up to the main chain. And they themselves are decentralized in various ways, but then so they're externalizing, but with lower fees. And that seems wasteful to me. Whereas with MobileCoin, the way we've designed it specifically so that the network fees are super, super low, and then the fraud profile is very different in blockchain because it's a direct transaction. There is no middleman, and it's direct with your counterparty. And the funds are are final. It's a final transaction. So once it is in the hands, depending on how consensus is designed and the transaction protocol is designed, but it's actually out of your hands once you have sent it, and you can't claw it back. And this has pluses and minuses. It's all trade-offs all the way down. But one of the things that we think is important is that there still should be, in a healthy ecosystem, some way to reconcile if there was fraud happening. So we want our platform to be unattractive to bad actors, because we want to provide a platform for use cases that help real people around the world solving real problems around payments. And we don't want to help bad actors find a way to continue bad behaviors. So we think it's important, even though we have this end-to-end encryption at the base layer and we have these low fees, for there to be a way to have a compliance protocol on top of that. And so it's like a layer, you can almost imagine it as like a layer 2 compliance protocol that allows you to opt in to share more information about your transaction so that you get more protection. And we think that this is exactly how credit card companies are operating, in terms of the paradigm, where you opt in to use Visa, MasterCard, and you know that you are sharing your data with them, but you're okay with that because of the fraud protections they can offer you. So that's the next step in this evolution of building payments from the ground up.
Wow, that's really interesting. I did read this one article from Bismarck Analysis. I don't know if you know who they are, but it's about it's called Visa Collects the Consumerism Tax, and it talks about how Visa started, and basically the flywheels that they used to come into their huge market share. And yeah, it's basically you pay exactly you basically Visa is paying most of that transaction fee to banks, and the banks have the incentives to put the credit cards in front of their users so that they can get the fees from the transactions. And basically, I think it's like Visa gets like a very, very small interchange fee. I think that's what they call it. And so like 90% of the fee just goes to a bank that is giving you that credit card. And so
that's the other. Okay, so this is the other really important aspect of their business model, is that like MasterCard does not issue cards. The banks issue the cards. And I think that that's not always clear, is like, oh, I have this MasterCard logo on this payment method, but it's a bank that has actually issued that card. And MasterCard is providing the bank access to the interchange network. And it's this beautiful network. Like if we're talking about global networks, like the MasterCard mesh network is a thing of beauty. And that's what blockchain is ultimately building to match to parity, is that sort of model. Yeah, if we can do it, if we can match the payments model, we will have a network on par with the MasterCard mesh network. Yeah.
Yeah, gotta stop getting distracted by the Bored Apes, etc., and focus on solving real problems. I think that's real. The pie is much bigger than you think it is. So
it is. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, just in the reserve ecosystem, it's like it's so cool, all the different things that are going on there. And yeah, the opportunity to do things is huge, and I wish more people would get involved in things and not just be like cheering on the sidelines. I do think that's really good, but it's like getting involved is easier than you think it is, and you can do it without stepping on people's toes as well. So
yeah.
But I did want to talk about Jambo. So recently in in March, I think it was, we had talked with you, and there were plans to do several different things with Jambo, and I was just kind of I've seen a couple of their posts on Twitter, but I was just wondering if you could give us maybe some updates.
Yeah, Jambo is rocking. They are so what Jambo's doing is releasing a new mobile phone offering that is very affordable. And the goal is to release this mobile phone into many of the regions of the world that do not have, like if you look at smartphone penetration, it's decent. It's decent around the world. Especially there are lots of places where there's kind of a leapfrog effect of the country never really building out the telecom structure with telephone wires. And so you skip landlines entirely, go straight to mobile phones. But then the leap from mobile phone to smartphone is a little bit harder. So, and that's because the devices are quite expensive. And so Jambo is a smartphone that is much more affordable, and it is launching with pre-installed Sentz. And so it's been really fun looking at our metrics of installs and seeing the ones pouring in from Jambo as Jambo launches in different regions. And so that's really great. Jambo also offers a kind of like rewards for learning program. So as you're going through the Sentz app, you can explore the app, and as you're learning, you get rewarded for being an early adopter and for trying out different features of our app. So yeah, so if you're in the market for a phone, definitely see if Jambo's in your area. And then at the same time, we have been continuing our go-to-market in Nigeria, especially targeting freelancers looking to get paid cross-border. And it's been very exciting. We actually just launched this past week local ramps in Nigeria that have some of the best on and off rates for Naira. And so we're really excited to see people already kind of flocking to this feature and being able to exchange Naira for eUSD.
Wow. Okay, so do you mind me asking what the rates are?
Yeah. Okay. So if you look at the exchange rate for Naira, there's two rates typically. So there's the official rate, and then there's more of the practical rate that you can get from either some banks offer the more practical rate or various other platforms offer it. And we're able to offer it even better than the platform rate or the practical rate, because we are partnering with direct on the ground ramps providers.
Oh, so it's kind of akin to like back in the day when RPay had a whole bunch of different independent liquidity providers to kind of like an exchange rate bidding process. And so it's like,
Exactly.
yeah, are you familiar with that when RPay was doing this in Venezuela?
Yeah, I think that the approach that they were using was a really smart one in many ways. And then I also understand that it was maybe not ultimately the model that they ended up going with for various infrastructure reasons. And yeah, the model that we're working with is similar in some ways and also different in some other ways.
Okay, cool. So I did have a question. So there is, and we can choose to not include this, but there is this. And I was just wondering if this is kind of like something that is more or less up to date. So eUSD, bridge to MobileCoin. There hasn't been, and sorry, I put it in the Telegram chat for what it's worth, the link, but it's auditor.mobilecoin.foundation. And so I wasn't sure if this is up to date or not. Oh, it looks
It
like
is.
somebody, yeah, because somebody edited it it used to say RSV. Oh, wait, no, that's when you click on details. Yes, it is. Okay, so, so this is up to date.
This is up to date. Yes.
Okay, cool. I think I can't remember how much RPay had, like under management TVL for RPay. But I can imagine, when you're dealing with other currencies, and GDP smaller, people are making not that much per week, that we can look at this and get really impatient.
Mm.
But
Yeah, yeah.
it's probably like kind of actually impressive to each person you onboard, and is actually keeping their funds in USD. Maybe another thing, and this is so I was talking to Henry about this, and this goes into the community participation thing that I'm trying pretty hard to get moving a little bit more. But eUSD is, one half Tether, one half USDC. And, some people are not so confident in Tether, right? But, Henry, I think, puts forward some very valid arguments about Tether actually being, seen by non US related people, that tether is actually like a very good thing. And it's like, well, if Tether were to be shrunk in proportion to eUSD collateral, or taken out of collateral entirely, that people would kind of see that as a bad thing, because you're kind of all you're if Tether is not under US jurisdiction, air quotes, in USDC and PYUSD and some other different, stable coins are, you are essentially exposing yourself not to single issuers but to single jurisdictions, right? And so, they kind of see, even though you're diversifying between issuers within the U.S., from the outside perspective, it's, well, there's a single jurisdiction that is actually in complete control of this currency, and so it's not as good. What do you think about that? Is that Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you summarized it perfectly. There is one of the things that, if we look back on USDT, USDC performance, USDC had a depeg early last year. They recovered from it. USDT also had a depeg, I think the year before, and recovered from it. And one of the things that was really important was they were able to pay out anyone who came to the window to get their dollar got $1. And I think that that's how you build trust. And certainly I hope that the world does not only need to rely on these two stablecoins. I think that actually the field is pretty wide open for stablecoins to continue to grow and flourish. There's just so much demand for USD liquidity. And so I look forward to all the ways, like hearing about USDM. I think they're doing a really incredible job. Or even things like Ethena, and a synthetic dollar that has, it has its own set of trade-offs. But I think it's really wonderful for us to be, and they launched in something like, what was it, $2.7 billion immediately in value locked in just a few months. That speaks to how much demand there is for stablecoins, and specifically USD stablecoins. And so, I'm excited I think there's a lot of opportunity for the basket to change as different stablecoins come out with properties that for eUSD that keep it in the hyper-stable realm. That's I hope that that's kind of answering your question.
It does. So I planned on doing a proposal this weekend to change the eUSD back in to 1/3 USDC, one-third USDT, and 1/3 PYUSD.
Yes. Oh, of course, PYUSD. I should have mentioned that one too. Yeah, I'm so excited for PYUSD.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's issued by Paxos, which I think is really cool. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about that. But I just think that, like, diversifying issuers just a tiny bit would be good. And if this is, like, something that people definitely don't agree with, they can go to the forums, discuss this, and then also use their staked RSR positions to vote for or against the change. when that proposal goes live. But I think that it's been kind of a little bit weird that nobody has really stepped in and really said anything. I think that the 50% tether does affect the TVL to a good degree of eUSD. Because if you kind of consider it from like two different angles, who's going to be putting the most money in things, and it's like, probably Western nations are going to be using, putting a lot of value into things. And with all due respect to African nations and, South America, well, Venezuela, is a good example. It's like 700,000 people using an app in Venezuela, and the total value of like all the deposits, is in the millions, in the maybe in the teens, and it's kind of really if we want eUSD to get a lot of recognition, sometimes we might need to sacrifice that tether, like freedom for, getting a little bit more recognition for it first, and increasing liquidity of the thing, would come from that. So, and then the collateral can change more over time. Maybe it goes to a fourth issuer of some other USD. Maybe it's from Athena, or maybe somebody else somewhere issues US dollar stablecoins. That would be that was not that wouldn't be like a US jurisdiction controlled sort of thing. So kind of like Tether. Anyways.
Right. No, I think that's really important, and I really appreciate that you're putting the proposals together, because the beauty of eUSD is like, so why would PayPal issue a stable coin through Paxos, right? Like, what's in it for PayPal? One, they want to be able to send money around the world. That is something that is clearly, they've been trying to get into the remittance game. They've been in the remittance game for a long time. They acquired Zoom, for example, for remittance purposes. And it is still hard for them to move into new markets. And blockchain helps them to do that a lot faster. And the other aspect of it is they make money off of every dollar in circulation through Paxos, right? So that's part of the design. And that's what the premium for offering liquidity, for offering to lock up some assets so that they can be accessed through some layer of provisioning or issuance. That's like traditional finance all the way down. Like, this is something that traditional financial ecosystems deeply understand. And what's so beautiful about eUSD is it gives that same opportunity to the everyday person. And so by securing the eUSD basket with RSR, you're getting to access these sorts of financial primitives that only the very, very wealthy or corporations have been able to access before when it comes to leverage. And so I think that that's so beautiful. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, is I want to keep building primitives like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it was always really like just this soul crushing thing to hear about when RPay decided to not serve Venezuela. And all of these people, you'd even see them on Twitter, and they're like, what's going on? I need this. They're knocking on the doors. They need access to US dollars. They really do. It's a very, very good store of value for like the entire world. And I think it's pretty obvious that, dollar dominance will very much in like the short, medium term will really start to, I think, grow a lot more than we think. And I think local currencies, just like local banks, will probably start to wane a lot more, and it'll strengthen the dollar to a degree. So, in my opinion, so.
Well, and it's been this way for a long time. I think that we forget that monetary policy is super hard, and for a long time, but way before blockchain, other countries would say, hey, we're just going to tie our, for various reasons, that economics are really challenging in our region right now. And the best thing we can do for our citizens is to tie our currency to another country's currency. And the US dollar has been that currency of choice multiple times. Even today, the dirham in the UAE is tied to the dollar. The Mexican peso was tied to the dollar for a while. Like, this is something that has been happening for a long time. And now the citizens through blockchain get to demand it, even if their country isn't making that choice at the moment.
Yeah, and even like, sorry, just to kind of go back a little bit, even if like eUSD had in its collateral another stable coin that was issued in the United States, maybe from like Wyoming, if they can get their stable coin off the ground, I think they will. But that could be a collateral asset within eUSD. And depending upon how they choose to issue their Wyoming stable token, that could be a little bit closer to a tether rather than a USDC sort of technology. But anyways, yeah, I think that's a pretty good cap on the USD discussion. I encourage everybody to go check out the forum, and just try to get involved. But do you have any other anything else you would like to talk about, Sara?
No, this was really great. Thank you so much, Braden.
Yeah, sure thing. I'll let you go, and just hope you enjoy your weekend.
You too. Happy Memorial Day.
Yeah, thanks, Sara. Bye.
All right. Bye.